Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Zach from On Cashflow, and today we are talking about my top 5 role models for financial independence. Everyone needs a role model, pretty much in everything that you want to accomplish, or at least someone to look up to, someone that's already been there, or maybe is on the same path as you to doing whatever that you want to do, but they need to be a little bit ahead of you, or maybe even already reached that goal. And today in this video, I'm giving you 5 of my top 5 role models when it comes to financial independence. Now, there's definitely a lot more people, a lot more role models that have gone into everything that I know about financial independence and everything going forward. There are so many great people in the financial independence community that you can look up to. And these are just the 5 that have probably had the biggest impact on me. And maybe it's just by chance, because these names are pretty much going to be outlined in the way that I've discovered them, or the time frame that I discovered them, when they made the impact on me. Because usually it's those first few influencers, those first few people that really have the biggest impact on you, the ones that have gotten you started. Even if you are currently moved on to someone else in order to, learn your information or get your inspiration from. And that's the great thing about it. You have the freedom to choose who you want to follow, to choose who you want to be your role model. And that is something that's very important that I've learned throughout my life, especially when I was in the military. I learned that, role models or mentors are number one. They're the biggest things in your life that's going to lead you to success. And it's the same thing when it comes to financial independence. So you need to find someone that you can model, someone that you can look up to, someone that's maybe already been there or is on the same path as you. Hey, maybe that could be me one day. I really hope so. I really hope that I can help you out. So without further ado, the number one, the very first person that has made a big impact on me and my financial independence journey is actually Robert Kiyosaki. That is the author of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series and many other spinoffs and books about that. If you've never heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's basically about, this guy growing up as a kid. I don't know if it's real or not. There's been a lot of controversy about it, but basically it's about this kid who has 2 different fathers, and one is actually his friend's dad and one is his own dad. And his own dad is basically, your typical high income employee type that just makes a lot of money but also spends a lot of money and basically never really gets ahead in life, and it just has a different mentality about money. Versus the friend's dad, which is like a business owner and just has a different mentality about money and growing wealth in general. And really the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book wasn't particularly about financial independence. It's more of like a get-rich kind of inspirational book that just teaches you lessons. And it really had a big impact on me because that was one of the very first personal finance books I read about, even though it's not specific about personal finance. It's more of like just general concepts of how to achieve wealth and get rich and things like that. And I actually think it was a pretty good book for my very first book, one of the first books that I actually read on this subject. And it's had an impact on a lot of people. Even though, the whole thing is kind of built up, it's become very commercialized, and now, the author Robert Kiyosaki, he does lots of talks, and he has products and all that kind of stuff. He's made a lot of money off of this whole idea, but really, I do think the book was a good book to read. I wouldn't actually recommend that book to be your number one book to read to achieve financial independence, but it did have a very big impact on me, and it was kind of my beginning journey. It kind of opened my eyes to different things, and I'm actually very glad that I found it and I read about it. Person number 2 is very, very famous in the financial independence community, Mr. Money Mustache, also known as Pete. But anyway, Mr. Money Mustache, he has a very, very popular, very successful blog about financial independence. I think he might have been one of the very first, financial independence bloggers. I'm not really sure, but I know he started pretty early, and his story is very inspirational. He's taught financial independence to so many people, and he's really focused on, investing a lot of money in index funds and reducing your expenses. And really everything that I talk about when it comes to financial independence is kind of mirrored off of that. And a lot of my inspiration is from Mr. Money Mustache. I think that he might have been the actual very first person that introduced me to financial independence. Maybe. At least that's what I would remember, because I actually have a pretty bad memory, to be honest. I think that was the first blog that I actually read, and I remember, I can't remember exactly the first article that I read about it, but one that really stuck out to me. It's known as the Shockingly Simple Math to Early Retirement. And that is the one that really stuck out to me and really got me going. And I think eventually I looked back and I went to his website and I kind of went to the page that shows every post since the beginning of time, and I just started from the beginning, and I think I read just about every post on his website, at least very close to it. And a lot of that knowledge has kind of stuck with me today, and it's a lot of what I still follow, a lot of those principles that he talked about back in the day. And the way he does it with his personality it's really amazing. So if by chance you're in the FIRE community and you don't know who Mr. Money Mustache is, then you've probably been living under a rock. But anyway, you should know who Mr. Money Mustache is, because he will change your life, no doubt, just by reading some of his most popular articles on his blog. I hope that one day maybe I could have even a fraction of a percent of the impact that Mr. Money Mustache has had, or any of these other role models that I'm going to discuss today. One day I really hope that I can have that impact on someone's life, maybe even including your life. If you want to join me on the journey to financial independence, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel, because every single week I am putting out new information on personal finance, especially when it comes to saving, investing, saving money on your taxes, and just growing your net worth and achieving financial independence. So if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, and if you're not subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button. And if you're enjoying this particular video, please don't forget to like it, give me that thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. It helps me out and it motivates me to keep making these videos. But getting on to role model number 3. So role model number 3 is actually known as the Mad Fienist. So I don't even know if I'm saying that word right, the Fienist, I don't know. But that personality is from a guy named Brandon, and I don't think anyone really knows his last name for privacy reasons. But Brandon, he has a blog and he has a really good podcast just known as the Financial Independence Podcast, where he basically interviews lots of people in the financial independence community, and it's really an awesome podcast. But I first discovered him actually on his website, and I believe the number one thing that stuck out to me was his take on taxes. So one of the biggest things that I learned from Brandon was the Roth IRA ladder. Basically summed up, the Roth IRA ladder is a way that you can access your retirement funds practically tax-free and well before 59 and a half. So typically, you have to wait till you're 59 and a half unless you want to pay a 10% penalty. But the way that this Roth IRA ladder strategy is designed is where you will roll money from a traditional IRA or traditional 401k into a Roth IRA, and then after 5 years you can basically access those funds because it's treated as a contribution, and you can withdraw contributions from a Roth IRA tax and penalty free. It's really a strategy for a lot of people in the financial independence community to access their retirement funds practically tax free or very low tax, penalty free, and well before 59 and a half. So that is one of the biggest impacts that Brandon has had on my life. And of course, he has many different articles talking about very in-depth tax topics, and so that's really what drew me onto him. And now taxes are one of the biggest things on my mind, one of the biggest things that I actually focus on, especially in financial independence, because if you can reduce your taxes 100% legally while building your net worth, why wouldn't you do it? It's a surefire way to reduce your expenses and increase your net worth very quickly and easily with very little effort on your part. Moving on to role model number 4, and she is actually Vicki Robin. She is kind of the main author of this very, very popular book about personal finance known as Your Money or Your Life. If you're in the FIRE community, you already know that book and you probably already read it. And if you haven't, stop what you're doing right now and go buy that book and read it, or check it out from your library if you want to be more frugal. Because Your Money or Your Life is such an important book, especially if you're actually working. Because I think the biggest impact that Your Money or Your Life has had on me is realizing how little you actually do get paid at work when you take all the factors into account. So in that book, Vicki Robin's the main author, but I think she did it with a few other authors, like co-authors. But in that book, she talks about how work is sucking your life energy out of you, especially if it's something that you don't want to do. You want to work, if you want to work, a lot of us want to work, myself included with the on-cash flow business, but we want to do things that we want to do, things that we get enjoyment out of, If you're wasting your life energy on something that is making you sad, depressed, angry, a job like that, then it's really not the best use of your time, especially when you do the actual calculation of how much you are really getting paid, like on a per hour basis for your job. And that book goes into a lot of detail, but basically it's like you start with your gross pay, then you subtract out your taxes. Then you need to take into account how much time it takes you to get ready for work, take into account your commute to work, and then you got to take into account while you're at work, your actual working hours. And you need to take into account the lunch break. It might be an unpaid lunch break, most likely. And so that is time that you're not doing what you want to do because you're kind of stuck near work anyway, even on an unpaid lunch break. And then when you go back to work, and then you have a commute to go back home, and then you have to decompress from work. So you take all of these things, all of these hours and all this time, and there's many other different expenses associated with working. and you kind of subtract that out from your actual pay. And once you actually do that with your own job and you do it correctly, and it comes down to a very, very low pay for a lot of people. And you got to really stop and think, is all this time that I'm spending on this job that might be making me miserable, is it worth it? Is it worth it for that actual effective net pay? In most cases, it's not. And Your Money or Your Life really teaches you the importance of becoming financially independent as soon as possible so that you can get out of that situation. It's a really awesome book, and I highly recommend you read it. I'll actually put a link in the description below for you because it is that important. And number 5, last but definitely not least, is something that more recently that I have been introduced to, more recently that I have been consuming all this content, is the ChooseFi podcast. So ChooseFi is a podcast done by 2 main hosts. They have since expanded since they first started and created a whole business model out of it. But the 2 hosts are Jonathan and Brad, and they basically just talk about anything related to financial independence. I think it started in 2017, and right now we're in 2020, so they've been doing it for about 3 years. There are many different episodes on it, and I'm still working my way through pretty much every single episode because there's just a ton of information in there that can benefit anyone on the path to financial independence. The ChooseFi podcast is definitely one of my favorite podcasts, and I know they have a whole website and a whole thing going on. They have a really good business model when it comes to that. But the ChooseFi podcast, it is free. It's full of a ton of information, and you can kind of see the minds of these 2 individuals and kind of relate it to your own thinking, especially if you're on the path to financial independence yourself. So really, those are my top 5 role models when it comes to financial independence, and so far on my journey, and kind of the order of when I discovered them. There are many more people out there, many more role models for you to look up to. And if you have any that that are really great resources that I didn't mention here today, please leave them in a comment below. I want to hear about them. I want to learn even more for myself, and I know it might be able to benefit even more people that might watch this video. And by the way, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you enjoyed it. And if you want to keep watching, there's going to be 2 videos that pop up right next to me that might be something that you have missed that might definitely benefit you. So definitely check them out. Thanks again for watching. I'm Zach from OnCashflow.com, and I hope to see you next time.